Everyone. For this review, we'll be looking at the 2.2 Instructional Design section, and I'm focusing it on looking at a case together. There were 4 sections in this that the study guide focused on, 2.2.A, B, C, and D, and there were some other sections that those parts drew on, so I will draw on them in here as well. So for this case, what you would need are your ideas, since there is an opportunity to stop and you can answer the case questions as well. And if you want to participate with paper and pen or pencil, you can do that. So by the end of this case, as we progress through it, there will be 6 steps. And then by the end of the case, we would be at the part of the process of developing the learning assets. This case is set in the construction industry, and the company's concern is that they are encountering shorter than expected wear on machine parts and high contamination of lubricants. For this case, I'm developing a course on how to improve cleanliness of machine lubrication practices for heavy equipment mechanics. So your role is to support me in it. What would you do for this case? If you go through the PowerPoint, there's the option to click on the case notes and go back and review anything along the way as well. Step 1. The meetings with the sponsor and manager of operations have been held. What should I identify as the initial steps in designing a training solution? As a learning opportunity, every step that we go through, you could stop here and pause the video and free write what you would do. As a second option, you could just continue and view the multiple choice and then mark your answers on your paper. Or you can simply see the discussion as I go along. So what should I identify as the initial steps in designing a training solution? I'll give 3 seconds in case you want to pause and then show what I chose. So my responses for this one are A and D, and I'll look at these closer in the material that was in the sections, but I chose to conduct a needs assessment to determine the skill, knowledge, or performance gaps because everything depends on the needs assessment. Everything comes back to it, whether it's evaluation or the outcomes or the objectives. And D, it's important to determine if knowledge or skills are the drivers, or is it something else? Is it something that training will not even address? So as a summary of this, as we're going through the process in the needs analysis discussion in the TDBoK, there were 2 things that stood out to me. To consider 3 levels of needs assessment and using a 6-step process. So if you want to continue on with me, I'll look at that, or if you want to just follow the case, then you can stop there. Looking at the needs assessment, you'll notice there's nothing up in the top here because this was not in those 4 sections. But since the whole instructional design process refers back to the needs assessment, I included it here as the first step. So first, what is the value? The value was discussed as being important for sponsors about what the outcome is and being able to uncover specific skills or knowledge gaps. And so one of the ways I represent that here is that since it's based on data, it can determine where the performance gaps are. What are they able to do, and how is that different than what they're intended to do, what they are desired to do. It's also during this needs assessment that you may be able to determine and confirm that the performance problem that's being seen is indeed a training problem. And then the second is that the value of it is it guides the rest of the instructional design process. Again, this gives the data to be able to have those conversations with the sponsors about what the outcomes are, what they will look at, and how the performance is expected to change by the end of the training solution. If evaluation will be a part of the design, then this establishes the back end for that evaluation. One of the ways that looks for establishing the evaluation is measures can be taken in the 4 stages that match up with the 4 levels of evaluation. So the business needs, the job performance, the knowledge and skill mastery, and learner reaction or learner needs. So the 4 levels of assessment are organizational assessment. This is focusing on the knowledge and skills that employees will need in the future, reviewing organizational mission, goals, priorities, survey data, and looking at organizational projections for the future. Task assessment is another word for a job analysis. It's where you are systematically identifying everything that's needed for a job, the skills, knowledge, tools, conditions, requirements. And lastly, the individual assessment is looking at the learner and the learner needs. So this is pinpointing what are the key activities that an individual needs to do and how do they do it to perform well. The last thing is the 6 steps in conducting a needs analysis, and I've abbreviated it by the acronym DISCUSS because it sounds so close to discuss, just as a way to remember it. So I looked at this as like a front end and a back end, defining the purpose and then finishing up by sharing the findings, and everything in the middle is data. So identifying what's necessary. What kind of data is it? Is it going to be opinion? Is it going to be quantitative numbers? And then selecting how you're going to collect it. Is it going to be surveys? Is it going to be looking at job performance, observations? Then number 4, collecting it, getting it in your hands, and then analysis, analyzing and confirming it, and then sharing it. Sharing the findings are likely to include identifying those problems and needs, the weak areas, strategies for improvement, and putting it in a visual way to communicate that, tables, graphs, and a final report for the stakeholder sponsor. That is where we will end off with this one, and next time we'll pick up with step 2.